Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is stay. Let's look at some definitions. The first definition is to spend some time or remain in a place or with a group. Many people right now are hearing stay inside, so that would be kind of remaining in a place or spending a lot of time in a particular place. A second definition is to continue in the same state or condition. I've also been hearing a lot of people say things like stay healthy. That would meet that particular definition. The third definition I have is to live somewhere temporarily as a visitor or a guest. So sometimes as people travel, they will talk about the place that they are staying. Stay is a regular verb. To make it progressive, all we need to do is add ing. We don't double the y because a and y are making a vowel sound together. And then if we want to make past tense for this verb, all we have to do is add ed. And since this is a regular verb, the participle form is the same as the past tense. Stayed. Makes a nice duh sound on the end of it. Let's look at some phrasal verbs next. These are not all of the phrasal verbs or all of the meanings for the phrasal verbs with stay, but I think these are some of the more common ones you might hear. So the first one we're going to look at is stay at, and it's really connected to that third definition we were just looking at. Its meaning is to be a guest at a place. So, as an example, which hotel are you staying at? Another phrasal verb you might hear is to stay away from someone or stay away from something. And it means to be absent or remain at a distance. Here's an example sentence of that. I have a bad cough, so please stay away from me. After that from, you're always going to have an object, so a person or a thing that comes after that. Another phrasal verb you might hear is to stay in, and it means to remain indoors or remain in a particular position. I'm going to use that second definition for my example sentence here. The screw won't stay in place. The next phrasal verb we'll look at is kind of the opposite of stay in. It's stay out. So this could be to remain outside a building, or it could mean to remain away from home. Here's it used in a sentence. I'm going to stay out here in the sun while it is nice and warm. Another phrasal verb you might hear is stay under, and it means to continue to be beneath something. And here's an example of that. The swimmer stayed under the water for a minute. Final phrasal verb we'll look at today is stay up, and it means to remain awake. Here it is in an example sentence. The children stayed up past their bedtime last night. Let's continue looking at stay, but now in some different verb tenses. Today I'm going to start with imperatives, or you might hear these called commands. These sentences tend to be a little unique because they do not begin with a subject. The subject is implied, and the subject generally is you in the singular or you in the plural. So let's look at a command that's affirmative or positive here. Stay in while it is raining. Okay? So we're using that phrasal verb we just talked about, stay in, but it's a command. So we're always going to use that base verb with imperatives, so there will never be an S on the end of the verb. In the negative for a command, we're going to use don't and the base verb. And again, it's always don't, never doesn't. Okay. Here's an example of that. Don't stay in the bathroom too long. If you grew up in a big family, that might be something siblings and parents and children say to one another. There is no yes or no form of question for an imperative. A command is a declarative statement. So I don't have an example of that for you because it doesn't exist. Let's look now at the simple past tense. So with simple past tense, we're thinking about actions that were completed at a definite time in the past. Let's look at an affirmative example. She stayed at a Motel 6 in Chicago last month. So there we have a specific place. We're using our phrasal verb stay at, and we have that definite time in the past. To make negative with simple past tense, we're going to use did not and then the base verb. Here's an example of that. He didn't stay in class very long yesterday. Okay. And if we want to make a question in the simple past tense, just a yes or no, we're going to start with did, then our subject, then the base verb. Did you stay relaxed during the dental procedure? Okay. Finally, let's look at the present progressive. Here we're talking about actions that are in progress, that have not been completed yet. In the affirmative, we're going to have a subject, then our be verb, which will change based on the subject, so am, is, or are, and then we'll use the verb with ing. Here's an example of that. The dog is staying out during the day. If we want to make present progressive negative, we need to put not right after our be verb. Here's an example of that. They aren't staying up very late. Finally, if we want to make a yes or no question in the present progressive, what we need to do is switch the order of our be verb and the subject. So here's a question. Are you staying away from playground equipment? We have an order in our city and many cities around the country right now to do just that. Finally, today, let's take a look at some related words. So we've been talking about stay as a verb, but stay could also be a noun. And it means, as a noun, a period of staying somewhere, in particular, maybe living somewhere temporarily as a visitor or a guest. So one way I've heard this word used is perhaps when I'm checking out of a hotel, an employee might say, "Did you have a nice stay?" And again, I can tell it's being used as noun there because I have an adjective right before it, and we have that a nice. That's a good clue that it's being used as a noun. Another kind of connected adjective that you might hear people talk about is stay at home. And so the meaning of this means that you are remaining at home, especially to work with or tend to children and domestic duties while a spouse is at work. So the most common way you might hear this is someone describing themselves as a stay-at-home dad or a stay-at-home mom. And that's my example sentence here. He's going to be a stay-at-home dad until the youngest turns 13. Finally, the last thing I'm going to leave you with today is a little different, but it's something I've heard in the news often. It's an idiom with stay, and it's stay the course. It means to continue with a process or effort, maybe a project, even though that thing is quite difficult. So how I've heard this used in a few different ways in the last couple of weeks. that doctors say that we should stay the course with social distancing. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you will try out stay in your writing or your speaking this week. Feel free to write some of your own sentences in different verb tenses in the comment section. I'll check them out and give you feedback. Have a great day.